This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Before we get started, check out nectargrowth.com. nectargrowth.com. It's free to join, but not for long. Nectar is an extension of the roller coaster. It's where you can start your own journey of self-exploration and growth. In Nectar, you'll find different topics of interest, daily blogs, affirmations, journal prompts, and you can connect with some of the fantastic coaches that have been on the roller coaster. Soon, we'll be adding videos, meditations, live discussions, and events. Our signature course is a journey of self-improvement, and it's valued at $397. But once you join, it's available to you at no cost. So if you're feeling stuck, if you feel like you need to change and not sure where to start with Nectar Growth Network. Come join us. You know you're worth it. Now, let's get on with today's show. If you go back to the beginning of the Roller Coaster Podcast, episodes 1 through 10, they were recorded in person in my basement at my home in Ottawa. And if you listen to those episodes, you'll notice that I have a co-host, Jamie Walker. So what happened to Jamie? As I get ready to launch episode 200, I thought it would be a really good time to go back, reconnect with Jamie, and find out what the heck she's been up to. Welcome back to the roller coaster, Jamie.
Thanks so much, Lucy. I'm really excited to be back.
Okay, so we started recording the roller coaster the day after, what was it, 2 tornadoes hit Ottawa?
2 tornadoes hit Ottawa. Most of the city was actually out of power, except for your house for some amazing, incredible reason.
You had no power.
I had no power. I showed up to your house unshowered. I had I did a bit of makeup, but I was not a complete hot mess, but I've seen better days when we had power.
That's okay. I had power. I think I was a hot mess anyway, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. This looked cool, and you remember we had those rented mics. We'd had that whole setup, and we all had our big headsets, and there's Jeff at the helm of it all, telling us what to do, because I had no clue. I had honestly no clue what was going on.
We looked really professional. I think that was the key, because we had no idea what the heck we were doing, but we looked good. Anyways.
And even saying the introductions, it felt so robotic, and I'm I love to talk. I'm a big talker, but it was those first times getting, behind the mic, you're
right? It's nerve-wracking, especially when you're taking on something like the roller coaster and preparation to have this conversation. I did go back and listen to some of the previous episodes, and yeah, you can hear the nerves happening, but that's real.
Which ones did you listen to?
I went back and I listened. Kylie Delfino is
yes,
that's my number one. I'm a big fan of her and her work, and that inner critic, because I've come face to face with that over the last couple of years quite heavily. So it's an episode that I actually go back to quite often, and I believe it was within one of the first couple of recordings that we did that it could have been actually recorded on the day that the day after the tornadoes hit. Yeah. So, and she had no power at her place either.
No, I don't know if she had no power, but she'd been in emergency with her dog all night.
Yeah.
And God love her. And I'm and you're still coming? She's like, yeah. I might be 5 or 10 minutes late. I just need a shower, but I'll be there.
Incredible.
And it was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, if anyone listening wants to go back to like earlier episodes, I highly like pinpoint that one.
I think that was
It's
episode
really
2.
powerful. Yeah, I think 2 or 3. It's incredibly powerful.
And it's funny because one of a popular episode that I still see people going back to in the analytics for the podcast, I see a lot of people going back to one that you and I did just on a whim, and that was the vision board one and theme music.
That's interesting. See, I
Yeah.
think that and that episode, I think, is one of the first ones, or one of the few ones that it's just you and I talking back and forth.
Yeah.
And it was 100% on a whim. I think it was because I was interested in vision boards, and I want to learn. So we're like, let's have a conversation about that. And that one's actually kind of real and raw too.
Yeah. Yeah. The vision
So
board one it's still very popular. And we also talked about, because that's when we finally got the recording from my brother, because it was his band that did all the music, and Jeff
yes,
went in and Jeff did the lyrics. I tried to, but it just crash and burn. I can't sing. I have no rhythm. They were trying to get me to, on cue. I think they were trying to get me to say roller coaster. And I remember being in the soundproof booth and they're all looking at me. And I'm like, just tell me when I'm supposed to say something. And they're like, on the 3. I'm like, I don't know what the fucking 3 is.
right.
This is Lucy you're talking to. She doesn't have music in her.
No, we all have our strengths, right? Like, yeah. It's not
music is not mine.
Music's not yours, but you have an incredible brother and Jeff and people that surround you to prepare that stuff for you to make. And I remember when we first got that, and it's because it's such a cool thing to have a theme song, and it makes you feel like it makes it feel even more real. And they did such an amazing job.
Yeah. So that was 2018.
Yeah.
That was a while ago. So what have you been up to? Because we haven't until you reached out, like our lives just went in different ways, and I left Ottawa and all that. So we actually haven't spoken. We haven't seen what's going on. So
no.
What have you been up to?
So quite a bit has adjusted and changed, and what I'm actually in the middle of kind of a messy middle situation right now as I'm thinking about my next journey and my next big leg of my life. So, and that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about the changes of life and going with the flow and the messiness that it can be, because it's incredibly beautiful. But since 2018, so that was just before COVID, and COVID eventually hit. I was actually supposed to get married. I got engaged. I was supposed to get married. COVID then hit, which caused many weddings to go a little bit pushed back.
So when was your wedding supposed to happen?
So my wedding was actually originally supposed to happen in January 2020. It was supposed to happen. No, so excuse me. No, January 2021. This past January was supposed to happen.
Okay, so this past January was supposed to happen.
Yes.
And COVID and everything sort of went sideways in sort of February of,
like, the year before, the March.
2020.
Like 2020, but things and here in Canada, or at least in Ontario, things had not settled down at all. Things were still quite all over the place. So we ended up pushing that wedding back another year to 2022. So just to try and, like, because when you're planning a wedding, it's also for your loved ones, and you want everyone to be safe and you want everyone to be there. So you're trying to always, so it was a challenge to sit there going, like, trying to predict this pandemic, which no one can predict this. Like, there's no.
That's the one thing we know for sure.
Yeah,
we don't know shit.
We don't know shit about this, and so that was a stressful time trying to figure it out. But something really interesting did end up happening, because in the midst of pushing things back, it really, and I mean, there was a pandemic stress that added to a lot of things in life, stress with family, stress with, and there things started happening and shifting within my relationship with my former fiance. And it was like, I think the pause started showing us that as much as we love each other, we weren't meant for forever. And it was heartbreaking to come to that realization.
Who came to it first?
It's actually really hard to say.
So it was really mutual then.
It really, I feel now that it really was. And when I was in the middle of it, I would definitely say that consciously, I think it was me. Subconsciously, I think it was him. Because when you look back and you start looking at different behaviors, different actions, different things that were going down, your body tells you when something's not right, or when you start doing actions that are not in alignment with yourself, and you might not be aware of it. And that's the thing that that's really, really hard. It's hard when you see a loved one going through that, or it's hard when you feel like you don't know why you're doing things. But the truth is that usually it's happening because something's not right. Your body and your soul is telling you that something is not right. And so both of us were kind of going through this moment. And one thing about my ex and I, we were very different people. We realized we had to come to an understanding that we want completely different things in life. We want, and we're motivated by different things. So as much as we love each other, and he is an incredible person, we had to make that hard decision of, we need to move on and grow in separate ways.
And when did that happen?
That actually happened earlier this year.
So really, you should have been married.
We should have been married. Yeah. That's the crazy thing, is that we should have been married. But because of the way the universe works and with everything that happens in life, we weren't. And there's a reason why we weren't meant to be married yet.
So where did you find your courage to speak your truth?
Therapy. Yeah, I mean, for that, we actually have to step back a little even further to COVID. It was about a year, or maybe about 9 to 10 months after the roller coaster, that I had parted ways with you, and I ended up in a bit of a darker space. So, and this is a dark space that I am aware of, and I've fought demons when I was younger. But this time I had thoughts of suicide. I had thoughts of nobody loved me. And this is all when I was with my ex. No, and he did absolutely nothing wrong. But I had really, I was scared. I was actually very scared of where my thoughts were going. So I finally took the courage and said, I'm going to go to therapy. And I found a local therapist. And I remember just sitting on her couch and just telling her that I was scared, but I was done living my life in fear. I was done with it. I wasn't going to do this anymore. And that was a very profound moment. And that's something that's going to probably stick with me for a while. But I was like, I'm done. I want to live my life out of love. And I want to live my life out of courage. And if that scares me, it's going to scare me, but it's not based in fear. And so working with this amazing therapist, we started to unpack a lot of stuff from childhood traumas that I had never unpacked and I never acknowledged. I was always a very headstrong, move on type of person. but there was a lot of baggage that even still to this day I'm unpacking and trying to figure out and trying to grow. But I had never done that. So working with this therapist actually really helped me get there and open up and let go of some of that heavy burdens that I had going on. So that's where that seed of starting to get that courage to speak my truth and start on it's because, you know, as when we're young, we've got all the we're usually quite in line with who we are as deep down in our soul, and our bodies and minds are quite in line. And then as we grow older, we have all this layers and shit thrown on top of us, right? And then when we get to adults, oftentimes it takes sometimes a profound thought or action or event to start pulling off those layers. So I started the work, and I did that, and then outshined a lot more alignment with myself. And in that, I found the courage that to speak more openly and more of my truth.
So you started doing the inner work.
I did, yeah. And I was dabbling in it before. You know, I did meditations. I've done a gratitude journal since like I think 2014, and I've seen the changes that just being grateful and opening yourself up to new possibilities, what it can do to your life. But I was ready to start really digging in deeper.
You said something very interesting there. You said you dabbled
in
it. And I've done the exact same thing. You know, I hit a dark spot. I call it the bottom scraping the bottom of shit barrel. And I pulled myself out a certain, you know, I pulled myself out, let's say, but I too still had that, I call it my grief case, full of all that emotional baggage, all that shit that we've been carrying around.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I actually started working with someone professionally. I started working with Angela Matev. She's the astropsychologist. And it was through, you know, first of all, looking at my birth chart and working through some of the topics that kept coming up. That's when I really started to make progress. You know, it kind of gave me that quantum leap that I needed. And it's true. A lot of the times we kid ourselves that, you know, I can do this on my own. I can do this on my own. And for me, you know, I look back, part of that was because I am that headstrong person too, where, you know, I muster up my British tough upper lip and, you know, soldier on type of attitude, which is really kind of bullshit because you're not dealing with your feelings. And, you know, being able to work with somebody for the longest time, I saw it as a weakness. And again, it goes back to that vulnerability in other people is great, but for ourselves, we see it as a weakness.
Oh my gosh. And if you actually go back to that Kylie episode, I'm pretty sure you and I both admit that we hate being vulnerable.
Did we really? Okay.
Pretty sure, yeah.
And in dealing with vulnerability has been, you know, Angelica pulled it out of me and she's like, look, you really need to deal with this part of your life. And it has been through taking those courageous steps. And, you know, first I knew who I was, but I was still somewhat afraid to actually come out and say, no, this is who I am, because it's so different from the person I was pretending to be for so long.
Yes.
And what I've started to notice is, because people only knew the old me, i.e., let's just say my family. If you're curious as to what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the episode Just Dinner. Go back and listen to the episode called Hurt People Hurt. I only just recently had the courage to show my authentic self to family. It didn't go well, but that's okay.
It's on you. That's on
because I am who I am. I love who I am.
Exactly.
And nobody else has to love me. Nobody else has to like me. Nobody else has to validate me. That comes from me.
Exactly.
And I can say that now because of all the work I've been through.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are profound statements, and they're powerful. I'm on the edges of that. I can feel it deep inside me. And I think, like I said, just just beginnings of those journeys and doing harder and harder work.
Okay, so you said that you're on the verge of that.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a courageous step and maybe share with some of who the new Jamie is, or who the real Jamie is?
Sure. My voice is definitely probably going to crack a little bit because this is a big thing. But Jamie is just full of love. She just wants the best for everybody, and she just wants to help everybody else understand how amazing they are, and how unique they are, and how much having them here impacts the world. I can't do that work until I know deep down that that's how I feel about myself. And I cannot give that to people until I give that to myself.
Or you find it by doing it for other people. And that's exactly what I found. Yeah. I have healed through helping other people heal, through each episode I record, each coach I speak to, each solo episode that I write and share myself, sharing my own pain and journey. I know it's going to help somebody out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where my greatest healing has come from.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. And it's interesting that when we open ourselves up, how life helps you get there. When you finally say that I'm okay, like I'm ready, like something that I'm actually working towards right now, and I'm just starting, is actually my accreditation into life coaching. And how that came to be was just a divine intervention. It's the only way I can explain it. The way that my life set up itself to show me the academy that I did choose. So it's a Mind Rebel Academy that I'm working with. And how I got there was really interesting there, and the journey. And then one day, I've always been very interested in stuff, as we talked about, dabbling and things. But one day I was helping with, because I also do marketing consulting on the side as well. So I was helping them with some things and looking at some of their materials, and it spoke so deeply to me that it took the breath out of me. I burst into tears. I felt so incredibly whole that I literally dropped what I was doing, and I said, okay, I hear you. I'm here for it. This is my next path. And saying that right now, Lucy, and claiming it so hard, is actually one of the first times I've completely claimed it in public. Everybody else that
okay, now you're going to get me cracking up. But
yeah,
that's so cool. And that's the thing, is that now you've put it out there, now you've said it, it's not going to be as scary the next. It'll still be scary.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be as scary because, and that comes back to stepping out of your comfort zone. And I always use the analogy of dipping your toe in a pool. At first you dip it in and he's like, oh Christ, that's cold. And then, a little bit more, you get used to it. And then you pluck up the courage just to jump in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're still dipping your toe.
Yeah. I'm
kind of at the point where this week, I think I jumped off the edge and I'm like just about to go through the water. That's what I'm like. Oh God, it's cold. Oh my God, this is amazing. I think that's the point that I'm at. Yeah.
And it's there's scary and like exhilarating points at every point of those journeys, right? And we need to like honor ourselves in that, and the growth that we've came to even get there.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's important,
so cool.
is to take the time to look back.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the times we get caught up in looking at the journey ahead and thinking, oh my God, I have all this left to do. We forget to look back and see how far we've come.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And oftentimes when you sit back and you go, when you're overwhelmed with what you've got to do in the future, you've got this big, huge vision for yourself, and you're like, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get there. Oftentimes, if you sit quietly and then look back, you'll find the answers and the strength, because you got there. So if you got here, you can get there.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't have to know all of the details. You just have to have that belief that you'll be there. And, you know, part of the process is enjoying the journey to get there.
Exactly.
Because I think, you know, I've done this in the past, where you're so focused on the goal, you forget to enjoy what it takes to reach that goal and appreciate what it takes to reach that goal. But now, if you look back and you look at what you've done, how far you've come, what you've accomplished, the challenges you've overcome, just the way that you've changed, then looking forward isn't so scary, because you have that belief. You're like, well, I've already done it.
Exactly.
That's how I got here. So that's how I'm going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's up next for Jamie?
So like I said, it's going through the life coaching accreditation, and learning how to do that work for myself, and then being able to give it to others. The other thing that I actually have on the go as well is, and I'm excited to announce, is that I'm starting my own community and podcast called Side Hustles, or Side Hustlers. And it's with an incredible friend of mine, who, she is in her right, and an incredible inspiration. And we came together because we both work side jobs. I've always done something. I always have a couple of projects on the side of like working full time. And with the pandemic, we saw an increase of people doing it as well. We're like, what if we could build this community of side hustlers that, one, inspire each other to go after what we want to do in life. Two, acknowledge that, you know, sometimes you don't necessarily have to abandon the full corporate job to do what you want in your life. You don't have to do that. Everyone gets the same 24 hours in a day. So, and three, providing tools and resources to people who want to do their own side hustle. So whether that's, we'll probably talk a little bit about marketing on the channel. We'll probably talk about, you know, money and business and grants and what's available that you could maybe even get money to start your side hustles. Talk about, you know, if you got to build a website, we'll bring in some developers to talk about that, some other business coaches, some other really incredibly inspiring people that have done their own side hustles. You know, from our authors to coaches to, you know, business owners to, you know, printing owners. You know, there's a whole huge gamut. The world is full of people creating things and doing things. And we want to shine a spotlight on that and encourage others to do it as well.
Wow. Like, it's crazy to see, you know, that you went from, you know, you said that it would have been in early 2019. You went from a very dark space to where you are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have you actually started recording your podcast?
So no, we're just putting together our website right now. You can actually follow us on Instagram at We Are Side Hustlers. And that's where you can see the announcement and when we do launch. So we're in the backgrounds right now, writing the blogs, putting the website together. Also, one thing is that we actually came up. So this is actually a really interesting point. My friend actually came up with this. Jenna came up with this a couple of years ago. just in the midst of the pandemic. And I thought it was genius. I was like, awesome, let's do a side hustle about side hustles. Like, I'm here for it. And then shit started hitting the fan within my relationship. And I was like, I had to go to her and I was like, I love this idea, but I don't have the capacity to do this right now. And she was incredible. And she's like, not a problem. We're going to put it on the shelf. We take it down when we're ready. And I think that was a lesson. That's a big lesson for me to say, when projects and things happen in our lives, and sometimes we're not ready. We don't have the capacity to breathe the life that we need to breathe into something. And it's okay. It's okay to say no, or I'm going to come back to it. And it's okay to put those really good ideas back up on the shelf for now.
Yeah. And, for me, I've been looking for a side hustle for, I'm going to say easily 10 years. And I've dabbled at different things and nothing really resonated with me. I try something and it was like, my heart's not in it. And so, you'd let it pass in that. But it was in that process I'm going to say it was about 10 years ago, I came up with the name Necture, Necture. And it's just a made up word, but I thought it sounded really cool. And Jeff really thought it was cool. I just didn't know what I was going to do with it. So it was always kicking around in the back of my head. And it was when I decided to build an online community, that supports, not only people that are looking to grow and move through similar things that I'd moved through. Also through doing the podcast, I realized how hard it was to actually find life coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the idea came to me about, a membership that would connect coaches with seekers, that's completely outside of the world of social media.
Yeah.
I've seen a very, very quick decline in the energy that's in, our traditional social media. And, every second post is somebody else's ad. There's always, there's sponsored content that looks like it's news, but it's not. And it's all mind manipulation. And, that's not what I see for the future. And that's why I took this word nectar. And it's funny because it's also building on Women's Growth Network, our old meetup group.
Yes.
And it was basically the perfect storm of everything that I learned and built on. And that's where Nectar Growth Network was born.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting that you, like, it's funny because that, like you said, Women's Growth Network is actually, that's how you and I connected way back in the,
it was. And that was just like, that's when Jeff was working up north. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be on my own a lot of the time, and I want to have a circle of people that are around me that, are interested in the same things that I am, but want to learn and grow and, become their best selves. And that's where, I created the Women's Growth Network.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that on, I think it was meetup.com potentially, or it was one of those social sites. And I saw it and it obviously spoke to me because I was in the middle of that I should never say beginning of the journeys, and we should never say we're beginning of a journey. We're always on a journey. But I was at a stage where I was looking for that growth and that inspiration, and it spoke to me, and that's why I joined, and that's where we connected.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Jamie, this has been fantastic catching up with you. It's like, I just feel like we haven't skipped a beat. How can people connect with you and learn more about Side Hustle?
Sure. So you can connect with us on Instagram. So if you look up We Are Side Hustlers, We Are Side Hustlers, say that 5 times fast. You can also connect with me on Instagram at WalkerXOXO. And those are probably where I'm most active. So.
if you're looking at connecting with Jamie and learning more about her Side Hustlers group, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And Jamie, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm really excited to connect with you again and see where Nectar grows next.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Ride, ride, roller coaster.